Dayton Hope Academy. I'm Kim.
And I'm Anna.
We are on week
23.
So get out those timeline cards and write week 23, card number 1 on the first card, and we're going to talk about Booker T. Washington. Now, in our other video, we talked about George Washington Carver. They are different guys. Isn't that cool? They both have the same last name, or same middle name and last name. And who do you think they were named after?
George Washington.
Very cool, they were. And so Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver were contemporaries. That means they were around the same they were around some of the same years. They might have even known each other. And Booker T. Washington, this guy right here, cool guy, he was born into slavery and he was 9 years old when the Civil War ended slavery. So your age, so it would have been like all of your life in slavery. And then he was freed and he became a houseboy. And later he went on to get his education. He was known as being very, very brilliant. And he was in Alabama, and so he started the Tuskegee Institute. Throw that up. And it was a black school in Alabama devoted to industrial and moral education for African American people and for the training of public school teachers. He very much saw it as important that school teachers be trained, so throw up a picture, so that African American students could go to school. One of the benefits of the Reconstruction period, which we're going to learn about either this week or next week, is that they implemented public schooling during that time. So schooling was becoming more and more important. So during this time that Booker T. Washington was working, he founded the National Negro Business League. It was founded in 1901, put that up. And it was in response to Jim Crow laws. So definitely put that up under the National Negro Business League. And Jim Crow laws were laws that were enacted by white people to oppress people who were from African American heritage. And so Jim Crow laws would say that African Americans could only be out certain times during the day, and they had a curfew and when they had to go home. And that if there was a train, that one part of the train would be for white people and one part of the train would be for black people, that the black people could not go into the nicer area. And there were thousands of these laws that oppressed African American people. And so one of the things that Booker T. Washington was known for saying is he said that African Americans were like a hand with fingers. Even though they were separate people, they were all part of the same community, all part of the same hand, and that they needed to work together. That African American people needed to be thrifty and save their money and build up their lives, because they, by doing that and by becoming educated, they would prove that these laws were ridiculous. And so he was trying to go from that angle on getting rid of this prejudice that was so much against the African American people. And that wasn't seen as particularly positive by many African American people who wanted to fight it. And I think that there are pros and cons on both sides of that. So it's definitely worth a discussion with your mom and see what she thinks. So he also formed the Niagara movement, or the Niagara movement was formed, and the NAACP was formed to work for political rights. Something that was happening to the African American people is that they could be hurt or killed by other people sometimes, by white people, and nothing would happen to them. And so the atrocities that took place to these people even after the Civil War were so horrible. And so these movements were intended to help to stop that and to wake people up. So for the back of our card, I definitely think we need to put Tuskegee Institute, Alabama, Roll Tide. We need to put the Jim Crow laws, but maybe we should put a black X through those or something. So put Jim Crow laws up. We can leave these up. We definitely need to put that the fingers in the hand. Maybe put something like that up. And then he was an advisor to Theodore Roosevelt. Put him up. And William Howard Taft. And he wrote an autobiography, meaning a book about himself, called Up from Slavery, that was well read. So go ahead and put that up. So I want to see what else you learn about Booker T. Washington, but he was an outstanding example of what people could do even though they were born into slavery. It just shows how smart and how amazing people are. Okay, so our next card is week 23, card number 2.
Battle of Little Bighorn.
The Battle of Little Bighorn. And so what was happening, so throw up a map, the United States went before any colonists came, of just the Indian tribes, all right? And then throw up a map of the Indian tribes as they are today. Okay, so we've got these 2 maps up, and do you see the difference? This one is 100% Indian tribes, and this is like almost none. And that was because once the white, predominantly, and the African American settlers came in, they kept taking the land. So they didn't stop at the Appalachians after the War of 1812. They just kept going and going and going. And someone got this bright idea that you could put Native Americans who once ran the entire area of the United States, you could put them on reservations, and with very little education, without their way of life and all of that, and that they could just live there. It was a way to just scoot them away. And so one of the things that the United States did was they scooted them away to South Dakota, and they thought the United States thought that was fine, and the Native Americans were working it out until they discovered gold in South Dakota. And when they discovered gold in South Dakota, they wanted the Native Americans to move again, kind of like the Cherokees. And so they were squishing them more into these reservations. And so there were a couple of leaders of the Sioux, so throw that up, Sioux tribes. There was Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse. And they were leaders in the Great Plains. And the U.S. government was trying to put them into these reservations, and they started fighting back because they first tried to go along with it, but then they realized their people were dying, they weren't getting enough food, they weren't getting any education. There were so many things that were really happening that were so oppressive to their people. So George Armstrong Custer, throw him up, went to fight them. There had been many skirmishes, many fights with the military and the Native Americans, and it was primarily 3 tribes, the Apache, the Sioux, and the Cheyenne were the 3 tribes. And they got together under the leadership of Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse, and they attacked General Armstrong, or General Custer's troops. And they wound up attacking and killing 200 of them. And I think they left, so General Custer had 600 men, and somehow 200 of them got separated, and they were attacked by over 3,000 Native Americans, and every one of them was killed. And the consequence for this was that within almost 5 years, almost every one of the Sioux and the Cheyenne would be combined to reservations. So what it did was it really made the settlers, the American people, the white people, the people of the United States, it really made them upset that this massacre had been taking place, and they were extremely agitated about it, and so they just sent even more troops. They doubled down and they took the land. So when we're thinking about this, we need to think about like the Manifest Destiny, which was way back in the Monroe Doctrine, where the people believed, the Founding Fathers and many others believed that this land was given to us by God and that we were supposed to take it over. So you've got that being weighed with the fact that the Native Americans had already been there and had been there for a very long time. And you can look at like Joshua and Caleb going into the Promised Land. You can look at several Bible studies or stories about this, and I think it's something to discuss with your mom. You know, were they right or were they horribly wrong? And, you know, just it's a great discussion period. It's a great discussion topic. So for this one, I definitely want you to remember Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull, throw these up, General Custer, the Battle of Little Bighorn, the fact that they were completely outnumbered, and the fact that it made the government very upset, and they wound up doubling down, and the Indian people wound up in reservations after this. All right, so our last card for this week is week number 23, card number 3. And
The Reconstruction in the South.
excellent. So, George Washington. Abraham Lincoln has now died, and Andrew Johnson is the president, and he wants the United States to be a union. He wants it to be a union again. So the Confederate States have to apply to come back into the Union. And as they do, he decides to do a reconstruction. And so he splits the South into 5 sections, 5 sectors, and he focuses on rebuilding the infrastructure, like the roads, the bridges, things like that, helping the people to start businesses again, and just helping them in general. And so he sends a lot of people from the north to do that. One of the things that happens is the carpetbaggers come down. Carpetbaggers. So these are people who literally make a bag out of carpet, fill their stuff in it, and come down, and they're trying to get money out of the people who are so destitute, who are getting money from the government. So the carpetbaggers were frowned upon. Let's frown upon them. So carpetbaggers, not a good thing. And so the South was organized, represented by a coalition of African Americans who were very, very strong Republicans. The African American people saw that the North, the Republican president, Abraham Lincoln and Johnson, were very much trying to help them, and so they were very strong Republicans. And it wasn't until quite a bit later, when there was a depression, that black people or African Americans turned more toward the Democrat Party. So as the South was being reconstructed, the white people became increasingly agitated that there were so many Africans who had once been slaves who were now competing for jobs and who were now supporting their families, and they saw them as competition. And so they didn't see it as like Booker T. Washington saw it as, okay, well, let's double down and make ourselves better. Did I spit on you?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I apologize. So Booker T. Washington said, let's make ourselves better so that we can do better. And the white people could have done the same thing, but no. Say, but no.
But no.
No. They had to get nasty. And so they started things that were extremely racist. So they said, like in the Jim Crow laws from before that we talked about, that African American people could not do certain things. They also started during this period the Ku Klux Klan, which was a organization of just hateful, nasty people that did hateful, nasty things to African American people. So it was a time when, and then later Ulysses S. Grant, who was the president next, he took over and he continued this. And it was a time when the South was kind of trying to figure out what it all meant to be part of the Union again and to not have slavery, and what it meant for these African American people to now be, they did not see them as equal, but to be equal to them. So it was just this kind of this tension time. So for this card, let's put up some of our links. Let's definitely put up Andrew Johnson. Go ahead and put him up. Ulysses S. Grant. Let's put down Jim Crow laws. Let's put down nasty KKK. So we're not even going to say anything. There's nothing positive to say about that. So we're not going to even say. Then the Compromise of 1876 marked the end of the Reconstruction district period. So they were no longer in the 5 districts. So we are back to another compromise. But the struggle to deal with the revolution ushered in by slavery's eradication would continue into the South for many more years. So there was still, even though the Reconstruction era ended, there was still huge amounts of tension and problems with the white people accepting that the black people were no longer slaves. And I think that's it. So we're going to learn more about this, but we'll see you later.